Hello, everyone, and welcome to another conversation. This is the Mental Health for Dinner series. My name is Houston. I'm one of the co-founders of Character Strong, and grateful to share some of these conversations to support all people, but particularly through the lens of families. What can we do to support young people's mental health and our own along the way? And today I'm joined by Amy. Amy, introduce yourself.
I'm Amy Morin. I'm the editor-in-chief of Very Well Mind, which happens to be the biggest mental health website on the internet. I'm also a psychotherapist and the author of several books on mental strength, including 13 Things Mentally Strong Parents Don't Do. And I have a new one coming out that'll be called 13 Things Strong Kids Do.
Love it. Good little reframe there. I also liked how you slipped in very casually that Very Well Mind is the #1 mental health blog on the internet. That is a claim to fame. I quote Very Well Mind in my book, I think a couple of times.
So do you? That's great.
Yes, it's an incredible resource for those that don't know it yet. You do now. Let's talk about this as a distinction to start. You are editor-in-chief of a mental health blog and you write about mental strength. Those are two different words. How do you distinguish between the two?
I'm so glad you asked that, because sometimes people will say to me, well, I'm not very mentally strong. I have depression, or I want to be stronger so I don't have anxiety anymore. But they are two very distinct things. So we talk about it sort of similar to the way you talk about physical strength and physical health. Let's say you wanted to become physically strong. You go to the gym and you lift weights and you might build bigger muscles. But that doesn't mean you won't ever get a physical health problem. You still might get high cholesterol. You might get cancer someday. Mental strength is the same. You can do lots of things to build mental muscle. It can prevent a lot of mental health problems, but it doesn't guarantee that you won't ever develop one. And just because you have one doesn't mean that you're weak. Some of the strongest people I've ever met in my life were battling things like depression and anxiety. And they're doing a lot of the same things we are in life, but they're carrying around all of these extra struggles with them as they go through the motions. And so it's super important for people to know that if you develop a mental illness, it is not a sign of weakness at all.
Such a great distinction. And for a lot of people, I think just a sigh of relief that I'm a strong person, and right, it's like that binary thinking that we have so often in our culture. It's like you can be both mentally strong and mentally struggling.
Yes.
Same time.
Yes.
So you wrote this book. Now you have multiple, but particularly through that lens of parenting, of what mentally strong parents don't do. I like that frame because we respond better to Advil than vitamins in our culture. Like we need to know what should we avoid, or when we're in pain, what do we need to use to address it? And so one of the questions I have is, in the current realities of the world, and I could probably say that statement just about any time in our history, but particularly right now, young people are experiencing a tremendous amount of anxiety and stress and fear. What is one of the things, as a parent or a guardian of a kid who's experiencing pain, what do you do for them? Do you engage in that pain? How do you protect them, support them? How would you frame that for a parent who's navigating that with their kid?
It's so tough. We want to protect kids. We don't want them. It's hard to see your kids struggling in life. We don't want them to have any kind of emotional pain. So I see parents all the time that want to do right by their kids. So if the kid doesn't make the baseball team, they're calling the coach saying, can't you just do them this one favor this one time? Or they're trying to rescue their kids so that they don't have to experience any kind of pain in life. But the truth is, pain is part of life. And rather than becoming a shield, you want to make sure that you become a guide. Help your kids learn how to deal with pain in a healthy way, and you'll do them a great service in life. That way, when they're 25 years old and they don't get that job that they applied for, or they get rejected by their romantic partner, they have skills and tools to be able to use it. And that doesn't mean that you don't want to, toss your kids to the wolves now just to toughen them up, but it does mean at an age appropriate level to let them experience some discomfort. And you want to teach them, not just, I'm a weak kid who's so fragile, my parents have to do anything and everything for me. You want them to know, I'm a strong kid. And even though this is hard, I'm tough enough to handle it. And here's how we do it. And to be clear, it's not about teaching your kids not to cry or that they have to suppress their emotions. You want them to know it's okay to be really sad. Here's how we deal with sadness. Or it's okay to be really struggling right now, but here's how you can deal with it. And when we teach kids healthy coping strategies, could be as simple as teaching them you can color a picture when you feel bad. You can manage your emotions in a healthy way so that you don't have to come to me all the time, or I can let you know this news, even though it's bad news. I'm not going to shield you from everything. And we don't want to burden our kids with adult problems, and you don't want to let your 7-year-old necessarily sit in front of the 6 o'clock news, because it's bad news a lot of times. But on the other hand, it's not healthy for them to live in such a protective bubble that they aren't prepared for the realities of life either.
Shield versus guide is a great distinction in my brain. It's a bit of the hero's journey. Yeah, the Lord of the Rings movies would be bad if Gandalf just took Frodo straight to Mordor and like kind of did it for him. It would be right. First of all, there wouldn't be the trilogy. It's good stuff. And second of all, like that is the role that we are being asked to play in many ways, is the role of the guide, not the hero.
Right.
Is there a moment that like how, as a parent, how do you know when to truly intervene? Right? Where is it to the point where they can't do it on their own? How do we know that?
Oh, another great question. So it's really about knowing your kid. You are the expert on your kid. You know when your kid is struggling more than anybody else, or you know your kid's habits. You know when they respond well to certain things in life. You know how they normally deal with something. Maybe you have a kid that goes to their room for 24 hours and then when they emerge, they're in better shape. Maybe you have a kid that when they lock themselves in their room, you know that they're really suffering. So I always tell parents, you're the expert. We're going to figure out maybe what kinds of things you're doing aren't helpful and what kinds of things you can do that help. And so certainly if your kid is in a state that's lasting more than 2 weeks, we use this as a general rule when it comes to when should you seek professional help. If your kid's mood is off for more than 2 weeks, you see changes in their sleep, changes in their behavior that are upsetting, they're struggling more in school, those are all signs that they are having a lot of problems. And as a parent, you may not be the one who can always fix it. Just think of going to see a therapist similar to the way you might see a doctor. When they get a scrape on their knee, you know how to clean it out and you can put a Band-Aid on it. And when you have older kids, they know how to do that themselves. But when they break their arm, it's not up to you to fix it. Those are the times when you need to go talk to somebody else and you may need to get some professional help. Our emotional wounds are the same. And if you're questioning, I'm not sure if my kid needs help or not, it's probably a sign it wouldn't hurt to go talk to someone. Of course, a lot of 14-year-old boys, for example, aren't like, yes, I can't wait to go talk to a therapist, mom. And it can be a difficult sell to convince them to go. Sometimes kids will say, well, my parents think I'm crazy. But what you can do is you can just say, I think we need help with this, so I'm going to schedule us an appointment. And 99% of the time, if you do that, and then you say to your child, if you have a kid who's really like, I'm not going to that appointment, you say, well, I'm going to go and I'm going to talk about you. You're welcome to come with me if you'd like to give your side of the story. And I guarantee 99% of the time that works. Because kids are like, no, I want to, right. I'm going to go tell the therapist and you've got some problems too. And so a lot of times that's just one way to get them in the door. And I find once kids get in the door, usually they're like, okay, mom or dad, you can leave the room. I've got some things to talk about. And they may not want mom or dad to know that they don't mind going. I've had plenty of kids over the years that wanted to keep up the facade of, I hate therapy. And as soon as their parents left the room, they couldn't wait to talk, but they just didn't want their parents to know that it wasn't quite that bad.
So knowing your kids is different than being responsible for them. And I think that's another trap that a lot of families will fall into, is like, I'm responsible for your happiness or your suffering.
Exactly. That I think in today's social media world, there's so much pressure to raise happy kids and parents take it personally. If my kid isn't happy, then I must be a bad parent. I'm falling short somewhere. What can I do to make them happy right now or to make them look like they're a happier kid? Not always the case. It's not your fault. Sometimes kids just need some extra skills. It might be that they just need somebody else to talk to, and it's not a parenting weakness at all.
And what do we do to, when we see someone suffering, or when we play that comparison game with my kid's not as happy as this kid over here, how do we alleviate ourselves of that responsibility? What are some tools or strategies you've seen or used?
So one is just giving yourself that reality check of, it's sort of like we're seeing the outside of somebody's life, and we know from our own experience, what do you post on social media? The good stuff, right? Nobody's posting about their family fights. They're not talking about their struggles. Everybody's pasting on a smile for the family photo, and then 10 minutes later, there's a fight breaking out, but we don't talk about that. So just keeping that in check and reminding yourself no family's perfect, and you never know what goes on behind closed doors. And just because somebody looks happy when you see them doesn't mean that they necessarily are. And that we want to instill in kids too, that it's not about them being happier or better or winning and beating every other kid. The other kids aren't their competition. Same for us as parents or for families. It's not about being better than other families. We just want to become the best version of ourselves. And so when parents can just remind themselves of that, and if you have to take a break sometimes from social media, go ahead and do that too. That when your brain is really trying to convince you that everyone else is better, happier, they've got better vacations, their family's perfect and yours isn't, sometimes just taking a break can help put things in perspective again.
Yeah. As a little bit of an aside, but maybe not much of one, in the way that you write your books or Very Well Mind, do you talk about happiness as the aim, right? Is happiness the opposite of mental suffering, or is there another, how do you think about happiness, or what is well-being? What is the emotional state of it?
Oh, another great question. So many people think you have to be happy all the time, or if you're not, it's a weakness or it's a problem. And if you're not happy, you better pretend to be. And they put so much pressure on themselves that it backfires, and you cause yourself to become fairly miserable because you think, I'm not happy enough. Maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, you're a 7. And you think, well, something really good happened to me today. I should be a 10. And then suddenly you drop to more like a 4 on the list because you think 7 isn't good enough. So I'm a big proponent of saying there's nothing you shouldn't be chasing happiness. The journey to get to a better life doesn't necessarily mean you need to be happy right now. Nobody likes the pain and the struggle it takes to change sometimes, but changing your life might be what you need to have more joy down the road. And so that shouldn't be our end all be all goal. When people focus on saying, I have to be happy, they actually become fairly miserable most of the time. So to know that happiness is an emotion like other emotions, sometimes we're happy, sometimes we're sad. You got to take the good with the bad if you want to enjoy being happy. Then you have to embrace sadness sometimes too. And there's a lot of research that the relief from pain is actually a much better feeling than just happiness itself. So you mow the lawn on a hot day, and then you have a cold glass of lemonade. You enjoy that lemonade way more than if you just sat on the couch all day. Something about knowing, okay, I put in this effort, I put in the hard work, I had some pain, I went through something that was difficult, and now I get to reap the reward. It's like that reward is much sweeter, but you weren't happy on the way to get there. So I think for us to send that message to kids that you don't have to be happy all the time. And if you're not happy all the time, it doesn't mean that you're broken or that there's something wrong with you or that your life needs to be fixed. Sometimes we can tolerate boredom, or we can be lonely, or we can be sad or be angry about something. And that's part of being a healthy person too.
Yeah, that's so good. I love just the question of whatever you're going through, what's the glass of lemonade on the far side of it? It's not the same as like making lemonade out of lemons. It's more like you're going through something there will be something that on the far side you get to sip that looks different for a lot of people, but a beautiful and like actually a visceral image.
Right.
I want that lemonade now so badly. Thinking about like that idea of like where we're going, what we hope for our own life. Talk to me about values and thinking about it as a family unit. Our kids have their own identities. We have our identity as a family. When we talk about like what we want for ourselves or what we hope for our kids, what's another sort of thing to avoid as a parent when it comes to that idea of like values?
So chapter 13 in my book, the 13 thing mentally strong parents don't do is that they don't lose sight of their values, which is so tough in our world today. So for example, we know that most parents will say it's really important for my kids to be honest. I want to raise honest kids who are willing to do the hard thing sometimes. But then when you ask teenagers, how often do you cheat? Most of them say, oh, I cheat all the time. And you figure, well, what's the disconnect there? Well, I guarantee more often than not, parents are talking about, what'd you get on your algebra test today? How are your grades going? We focus on the end product. Parents don't really ask that question. Well, were you honest today? Was there anything you went through and it was really hard to tell the truth? We don't really talk about those kinds of things. And as the kindness expert, you might appreciate this one. An exercise I often do with parents is I ask them, if you were to walk into a parent-teacher conference and talk to the teacher, would you be prouder walking out of the room if that teacher said your kid was the smartest kid in the class or that your kid was the kindest kid in the class? And either way is okay. Some parents say, no, I really want to raise a smart kid. If that's your values, that's fine. But a lot of parents say, gosh, I'd be really proud if I had a kind kid. And so then I'll say, well, go home and ask your kids that question. And I'll get emails afterward from parents and they say, oh, I want my kid to be kind, but guess what? They think it's more important for me that they are smart. And it's so easy. How often do we talk about kindness? How often do we say, who were you kind to today? Most parents don't. We lose sight of that. And so I think for parents to know, you have to figure out what your values are first. You need to know when your kid's doing their math homework, but a friend calls crying because they're in some sort of a personal crisis. Do you want them to take that phone call and take a break from math? Or are you going to say, no, friends come later, math comes first? Just knowing these little things and these little life lessons and opportunities we have all day long to teach our kids about our values, you have to act according to them. And it's easy to say, yeah, I value hard work, but I value kindness even more, whatever it is. But you're going to be tested on that constantly through your kids' lives, and to be able to show them, no, I'm not just saying it. It's not just lip service, but this is what I actually value. And here's our family's priorities. And here's why we do it this way. Kids will absorb that much more than if we just occasionally lecture them on the importance of kindness or honesty.
So good. Yeah. I today was talking about the definition of success and how important it is to clarify that for ourselves, because it comes through in so many of the questions that we ask, the things that we measure, even in moments where we don't think we're measuring it, right? How your grade's doing is an action of measurement, and it is communicating to your kids or to young people at large, like, this is what we value more than this, because we're asking about it.
Right.
And so, yeah, just to think about, as we wrap up this conversation as it relates to mental health, it's like, what is success right now, right? Maybe not in the long term, but like in this unique time, what is success? And are we communicative about that? Are we asking questions around that? And if our definition of success is just arriving at the end of the day and feeling like we did something to connect with someone else, or we had one moment where we felt like we were at peace, then ask that question as a family. Did you have a moment where you felt content today? Did you have a moment where you felt connected to someone today? Not like, how was your Zoom class today? Like that. If what we measure matters. And so I love that reminder, Amy. So good.
And that's what, when it comes down to our mental health, that's what's really going to matter too. When we live according to our values, it's so much easier to be mentally healthy and to stay mentally strong and to feel like we have things together. When you're living according to somebody else's definition of success, or you don't know what your definition is, life is really hard.
Yeah. When you're unclear or out of integrity, everything's more exhausting.
Definitely.
Amy, thank you so much. Such good wisdom, so practical. And families who are interested in learning more can find all the goodness where it sounds like 2 places we might send them. Where are they?
Well, so the best place is my website, my personal website, which is Amy Morin, LCSW, is in licensed.clinicalsocialworker.com. Or you can definitely go to verywellmind.com and hear lots of information about mental health.
Good stuff. Thank you, Amy. Make it a great day.